Like a fine wine, I read fine literature. Do you? Don't bet on it. Hello, welcome to my channel. Another bibliophile reads. My name is Greg, and today I am doing the Snob-O-Meter Tag, created by That Reading Guy. He's a relatively new booktuber, so go check him out. This tag is all about reading snobbery, and it has 12 prompts. Prompt number 1. What is your definition of book snobbery? Book snobbery is when someone thinks their choice of reading material is superior to your own. Now, a lot of times you will meet people who think fine literature, like James Joyce, is the ultimate in reading experiences. But other people, they may enjoy The Morgau Rises by Peter Tremaine. And other people may choose to read romances. But when you think your chosen book genre or choices is better than others, then you're a snob. If you think you're a much better person by reading The Morgau Rises than the person who chooses to read Ulysses, then you're a snob. If you choose to read Ulysses and disdain The Morgau Rising, you're also a snob. Snobbery is not a one-way street. You can have high-class snobs. You can have low-class snobs. And me calling them high-class and low-class is a little bit of snobbery in and of itself. I also met a romance writer, and she was very defiant in her choice of writing romances, saying it was a lot of work to write a romance and be a romance writer. And you know, to some certain extent, she's probably correct. But she was still a book snob because we are part of a book group. And I happened to mention books by killer animals, and she was so defiant that her choice of romances were superior. So those are examples of some book snobs. Prompt number 2. Is there a genre or type of book you would never consider reading? Such as, would you ever read a romance? Or if you regularly read romance, would you ever try a science fiction novel? Well, I do rather read eclectically and widely. I have read a romance novel in my life. I did not think highly of the romance novel, but I read it on a challenge. Before BookTube, I was on a board on Kindle books, and we were challenging people back and forth to read books out of our comfort zone. And someone challenged me to read a romance book, and I did. As I said, not particularly successful in my opinion, but you know, maybe someday I will try another romance novel. I'm also not fond of the young adult genre. I'm way too old to be reading books for kids or young adults or middle graders or whatever you want to call them. And yes, that is a form of snobbery. So I cannot exclude myself entirely from that. I also would not read business books. When I worked for a corporation, there was a company-wide book group where everyone had to read a business book. And OMFG, was that book terrible. It was called Raving Fans I don't remember the author offhand, but it was all about building a customer base for your clients. It was mostly intended for the sales folk because your client base should be raving fans about the product you were selling. I was in IT, so I wouldn't be able to sell a bottle of water to a Bedouin. Prompt number 3. Does erotica count as literature? Yes, it can. Agnes Nin has written some of the most literary erotica out there. It's not really to my taste, but I would call it erotica. Agnes Nin was also in a relationship with Henry Miller, author of Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, and some others. And those are other examples of literary erotica. Now, the types of erotica I read nowadays tend to be cowboy trash, which, no, they're not literature, but they're fine reading nonetheless. Prompt number 4. Is it better to read classic books than popular bestsellers? I can't say definitively that it is. I probably read more classics than I do popular bestsellers, but that is just my taste. The classics are usually more well thought out and better written than the popular bestsellers, but I can't say that is entirely true all the time. There might be some very good popular bestsellers out there that will one day become classics in their own right. So, while I prefer classics, I will not say they're absolutely superior to the popular bestseller. Prompt number 5. Have you ever bragged about reading a classic in order to sound smart? I used to do that in my mid to late 20s all the time. Even though I started my reading career with H.P. Lovecraft and science fiction, I migrated over to literature after going to university. And I stuck with that for a long time, thinking that reading these horror novels, these science fiction novels, was somehow beneath me. So I would say, look at this literary novel that I read. It's so great. And yes, I was bragging, mostly when I was working in a bookstore, and I purposefully looked down at some of the people who read like Anne Rice. I was wrong back then. When you brag about what you read as superior to something else, that's really a slight on yourself and not the books that you have read or disdain reading. Prompt number 6. Do audiobooks count as reading? Yes, absolutely. Listening to an audiobook counts as reading. You may not be scanning the page with your eyes, but you are inputting the text with your ears. It is not 100% the same all of the time, but if a person can enjoy the book, they can understand the book, they can discuss it with other people with full understanding of what that book was about, it doesn't really matter in the end if you took that book in with your eyes or you took it in with your ears. I have a long history of listening to audiobooks. I've always counted them as reading. The fact that some people don't is definitely a form of snobbery. People who think that your eyes are somehow superior to your ears. If you don't like listening to an audiobook, that probably means you just have not acquired the skill of listening to an audiobook, because listening is a slightly different skill from reading, and a lot of people sort of ignore picking up that skill. I was forced to listen to audiobooks, or maybe forced is a bit of a misnomer, but in the late 90s, I had to commute to a job that was usually 1 hour and a half away from my home. So I had to spend 3 hours a day in the car. And 3 hours a day in a car is a long time. Too long to be satisfied with music on the radio. Because back in those days, you had a cassette player and you had the radio. So my library had lots of audiobooks on cassette, and I absolutely learned to devour the audiobook. And I will challenge anyone who thinks they don't count as reading. Prompt number 7. Have you ever looked down at someone for reading a popular fluff book? Well, I mentioned it when I was younger, in my 20s, but when I was in my 40s or maybe late 50s, I was again on a free booktube internet site, and a lot of people were talking about this book, The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. It is sort of a self-help book where if you believe hard enough in something, you can make it come true. Now, I have to draw the line there because her idea that you can wish something into existence or wish something to be true is absolute and total baloney. I draw the line at baloney. I can accept that someone might really like the novels of Anne Rice as equals to Leo Tolstoy. I can accept that. But what I draw the line is when you're accepting pseudoscience, something that is fake, as equally valid as something that is true, I do look down upon those people because I tell them, get out your baloney kit, as Carl Sagan used to say, and discover for yourself that that book is rubbish. Now that is a little bit of snobbery that I still hold within me. Prompt number 8. Have you ever been the recipient of someone else's snobbery? Well, every year I participate in Garbogust, the fabulous month where you read those really trashy books that the snobs love to look down upon. And I even read some that are very naughty or very violent. And in my comments of my videos, I once had someone say, I don't appreciate your salacious attitude. That was a bit of snobbery. Am I talking about some sex horror novel that I had just read and I found absolutely trashy and worthless and utterly entertaining to the last word? Prompt number 9. Would you ever be friends with a snob? Maybe you are already. You know, I'm sure I am friends with some book snobs somewhere on BookTube. Maybe not a whole lot because of the group that I tend to hang out with. We read a lot. We read Ulysses. We can also read The Morgau Rises and be totally fine with that. And you know, if someone wants to be a snob and they're my friend, it's better just to let them be and discover for themselves that you can enjoy books and not be a snob. 11. Measure yourself based on your answers to the previous 10. I think I have a little bit of snobbery in me. It's not all out yet, and maybe having just a little bit of snobbery is okay. The fact that I will read a wide variety of books and try not to condemn the choices of popular bestsellers too much, with the exception of The Secret and maybe some other pseudoscience books like that, I think I can possibly get away without being a snob. But honestly, it's the viewers of this video who are going to decide if another bibliophile reads is a snob. Prompt number 12. Tag some people. I think a lot of people I know have already been tagged, so I'm going to just tag them again to see if they're going to do it. Steve Donahue, I want to see your opinions on book snobbery. Debs at Rayner Reads. Elizabeth at Bookins and Books. MJ at Reading This Life. Alan at Big Hard Books and Classic. And Jim at Mystery and Mayhem. That's a wide variety of reading choices. Maybe some of them will have a little snobbery, or maybe not. Don't feel obligated to do this tag if you don't want to. And if you are just watching this tag and I didn't tag you, go ahead and do it yourself. You don't need my permission. Thank you so much for watching, and keep on reading literature or trash.